You know, I mean, clearly, when John Neuer left, just a personal story from when we started 6 years ago, there was a lot of skepticism about, you know, another group of people coming into fire stuff that happens over and over again. Like Lauren was saying, you know, it's just another cycle of, you know, it's okay, people drop out, and all of a sudden there's an emergency, and all of a sudden everybody's back knocking on the door saying, what can we do? And so the district was a little bit weird, you know, wary or whatever you want to call it, about this group coming in. And we met several times. But anyway, when he's leaving today, he said, you guys are doing such good work. Thank you so much. It's really, really great for the community. And that was that 6 years of hard work to do that. But we're now getting, like, my wife Nancy does the Facebook page, and they're now, the fire department's picking it up, the Brooktrails Community page is picking it up. So, you know, it's that thing about being around long enough where people start, you know, being used to having that and keeping it regular. So the Fire Safety Council now is sort of a stable place that has funding going forward, which wasn't the case for forever. So I think we've got some longevity there. But to me, that's what do we want to do as a community with all of our little fire safety councils and volunteers to stay sustainable. Because we're the same kind of thing. I mean, people come and they drop out and then they come back in and all that. So how do we as an organization stay sustainable? And one of the ways, I think, is by coordinating with these agencies. Because, you know, CAL FIRE, OES, the Supervisor, Brooktrails Fire Department, you know, they've all been really instrumental in helping us get funding for things and helping us to carry out implementation programs. So the more we can feed ourselves into those existing agencies and provide valuable services to them, they really appreciate it. I think that's one of the ways we become a long-term, you know, presence in the community that people can come in and out of as volunteers, but the organization stays there. So anyway, just throw that out there as an idea. So what do you guys think? We need to work on it.
Well, I thought it was interesting that the question of siren was brought up, and nobody on the panel said, yes, we're looking into it, or we have looked into it and this is what it's going to take and we can't do it, or there was just no response. So I think that's something that we should stay focused on and move forward with. We saw when the dozer took out the fiber optic cables during the 3-point fire that was coming at Willits, that a lot of communications was lost. And I think that alert, that just wake up, pay attention, something's going on, it's time to find out what's happening. I think that's an important piece.
Well, I agree with you, Brian. I grew up in the Midwest with tornadoes, and that's how that's the fastest way that everybody knew a tornado was coming.
The question is, how do we get a siren network that covers a wide enough area? I mean, where I am, we can barely on some days hear like the skunk train as it goes out of town. Any further than us, and you're not going to have anything from town come out. So we're going to have to figure out how to locate sirens outside of the town area that are connected in some way to be able to do that.
I think there already are some sirens located outside of town, like in the road that that's a siren there, right?
Yeah, well, so this has been looked at. For over a year, there was a bunch of studies going on about sirens and different types of sirens and how to trigger the sirens. There was a siren here at the firehouse here, and there was another siren up at the Blue Lake, up on the ridge. And at noon every day, they'd go off just like, you know, you can hear them all over the place. So it's not so much the hearing of them, it's the dispatching of them. And communications, et cetera, that kind of stuff, but also they're expensive. They can't use what was there, it's all rotted and whatever else is. But I think, just like the cameras, you know, there are some strategic locations, like Redwood Valley clearly would be one, and Brooktrails would be one, and the city of Willits, they had a siren there forever. I think the people next to the sirens was the genesis of the problem. They were saying, because they went off every day at noon, right? So if it was just for alerts, and they'd still have to test them, you know, so you'd still have 1 or 2 days every once in a while that they'd have to do a test to make sure they work, so there'd be some nuisance. But I don't believe it's a not viable solution. I think the radio was another one too that you brought up that also plays into it, so go ahead.
I just wanted to bring an update. I'm going to go really quick here because I do have to get going, but I don't want to leave you folks hanging. First off, my name is Gizmo, and I've been working on this project I think even before there was fire safe councils, back when the Greyhound bus was driving along the Ukiah Valley and the inner tire was throwing rubber, and so we were getting hundreds of spot fires along the way. We were trying to pull him over, and it was like, he thought like, oh my God, I'm in the mid-Old West, you know, we're like, are they coming out, like, you know, are they robbing? You know, and we finally got him pulled over. But what came of that was when he did stop in Redwood Valley, I looked across the way and saw the Amber Alert sign, realized that was a critical thing to utilize that's already paid for and already there. The second critical thing that came to mind was how audible systems work, including with animals, just basically warning there is imminent danger. This is what we really need to, I think, focus on, in my opinion. So the update on the audible, to relieve your question, sir, I didn't see your name tag off the top of my head. The new systems have actual wavelengths that they can direct. So it's crazy how awesome they can work. Even if you're like right underneath it, if you live underneath it, they can actually make it to where you don't even hear it, even if it's going off of like these, you know, ultimate decibels. So if we can coordinate our fire safe councils and our fire safe stuff with what you guys are doing, and we all go as one voice, the radio, the sirens are a guaranteed deal. I don't think anyone can argue that. And I think they actually start to feel, and I'm just gonna go out on a limb here, kind of dumb if there is, you know, birds and animals, and here we are as humans going, no, we don't need to be alerted. Well, we do. It's part of life. It's a life. It's you're gonna die or you're not. And so chasing the audible systems, this is what we did. The company is called Wilhelm, is the company that we're using. And we had a public meeting about it. And part of our recovery plan for Redwood Valley was to make sure that the sirens would work, to make sure that there was some kind of a liaison to the radio. So from CAL FIRE, from the sheriff, from somebody, because they didn't actually get on KZYX and even let us know what was going on, where to go, how to evacuate it. I mean, it was 24 or 40 hours later until we first actually heard any official anything, because all communications were down, except radio. So we need to remember when they say all communications go down, we need to remember except radio, except ham, except KZYX, except KUKI. Accept those systems, because they believe that there's nothing beyond that there's nothing beyond the computer. And so that is not true, as we all know. And of course, the actuality of trying to drive through smoke, and you know, if you watch any of the videos that people have taken, this is not a reality. You're not going to be going like this. What you need is directly through the AM/FM radio. You need to be able to know where you're going, how to get there. It's pitch black in the middle of the day. It's pitch black. You might not even see the stop sign that you're used to going to for 18 years or 16 years. So that type of step-by-step mechanical walking is what we are going to bring, and that's what the insurance companies and these people are going to want to see. And so our goal, in my opinion, even though it wasn't originally my goal, is to get our fire insurance back. At least have it reasonable.
Right.
I mean, we're not going to have any building. We are not going to have any housing. There's not going to be a place for our kids to go until we can actually make this dent. And fire insurance people, we should not allow them to walk away. They should pay for part of this. We can collectively say, fine, you want to walk away? Don't operate in California anymore for the next 20 years. If you're going to walk away from us, then we need to create legislation that says you're gonna walk away after us paying you for 40 years? Guess what? You don't get to come back to the 5th largest economy in the world anymore. Okay?
Scott, can you speak to Marin County's Fire Safe Council? You kind of mentioned earlier to me in a side conversation that was kind of like the gold standard, rather than trying everybody to reinvent for,
Gold is the magic word, Marin versus Mendocino.
Well, that's true. That's true, it
They
is.
got everything.
I understand, yeah, you're right.
Well, you can talk about their software, right? Didn't you guys try to use some of their home hardening software or something?
We do use some of their home assessment software. I mean, a necessary part of the puzzle is figuring out what the actual long-term financing is for all of this stuff. Huge part of it, and places that have solved it before us are places with a lot more money. So we're gonna have to, and one of the things we're talking with the fire chiefs about is sort of stepping back and doing a needs assessment and coming up with kind of the long-term thing that comes behind Measure P that is actually meets everybody's needs instead of this like catch can, can you get a little property tax here or whatever, but there are models out there. What Marin did a few years ago was they did a property tax measure that funds $20 million a year just for prevention services. And they're starting at the base, which is, the most important stuff that, the place. We talk about fire, we talk about forest fire, and almost, fire is almost the next word that comes out when people think of forest. But forest fires aren't the problem. The problem is that is our stuff burning, and that we haven't properly hardened it, and we put it in the wrong place, and we haven't properly cleared around it. We're never going to stop forests from burning. Forests have to burn, they're supposed to. But so, what Marin is doing is they are inspecting every home every year. And beginning to enforce things and beginning to make people take out the wrong plans, blah, blah, blah. So that's one approach. Sonoma, just last election, just passed a $60 million sales tax that is going to fund their fire districts up to a whole new level.
Wow.
And prevention services. So, we need to sort of step back and start thinking about how we can get into that game so we're not the way we keep this stuff permanent is in part, what you said was brilliant about networking is a huge part of it. Making sure that we're collaborating our resources and using them as efficiently as possible. But step 2 is figuring out what our permanent funding plan is and how we get out of this like scrapping from grant to grant. So we have an actual sort of core of people who have the expertise and who are there all the time on these issues.
Well, you've made huge progress on that so far, given what I remember when you took over, it was you and one person.
Yeah.
So
we're making some progress, but we got a long way to go.
Huge progress. I agree. So there's the new standards. Scott provided this to me, and so this is the new insurance standards. And so here is a standard that is already like somebody said. So somebody who doesn't have this information, you might want to look that up and see what your insurance company and actually start talking to them direct so that they know that we're, paying attention to what's going on and that we're willing to work with them, but they also have to work with us. Like teaching our kids how to ride bikes, they know that if you teach a kid how to ride a bicycle, he becomes a lot better driver in the future, and he also pays attention to other kids who are on bicycles because he was on a bicycle at one point in time. So I just want to make that point really quick. And I don't want to waste anybody's time here. I wanted to, I'm going to have to go here, so I just want to leave you guys with this. As far as money goes, my response to money in some cases has to be education and prevention. I don't know how much money was spent trying to find out who was driving their trailer chains in September of 2023 on the Ridgewood grade. But I think we all can agree that dragging trailer chains is a easily preventable with education, with people knowing that there shouldn't be more than the amount of links than it takes to make a proper turn which is basically a turn. So if you pull the chain tight and you add one link, it's usually only about that long. So anything that's going like this, or is actually not just if the bar and tongue fail, it's actually going to break and the people behind them end up crashing into the trailer. Not only is it doing that, but the chains are now, as our roads get chunked out, they're bouncing more and more. And so boom, as that hits the ground, spark fire. Now the fire that we had was on the Ridgewood Grade. It was the last fire, I think, in 2023. So it's pretty obvious to me that the education is not getting out if we're still having trailer change fires for 40 years. So what it costs to put that fire out, what it costs to try to chase the person down in helicopters, in sheriff's vehicles, is astronomical compared to cutting an old piece of fire hose and covering the chain, or having someone know the code, which is basic. It's a basic code, should be a sticker on the side of every trailer sold in California. Yet there is no sticker indicating the California code. And it's terrible because you go and you look at the stickers, there's all this safety stuff, but not one of them actually says what the safety chain is for. And so people are driving around as traveling arsonists, not even knowing they're lighting us on fire. So we should require the state to properly put the code on the side of the trailer, which basically says there is no more slack than to be left in a safety chain cable or equivalent device than is necessary to permit proper turning. That's it. All you have to do is be able to turn proper. Period. Anything else is too much. The second statement, when a drawbar is used as a towing connection, the safety chain cable or equivalent device shall be connected to the towed and towing vehicle and to the drawbar so as to prevent the drawbar from dropping to the ground. That's all it says. That's all we need it to say. And we need this sticker to be put on the side of every trailer sold in California. And if we want to get our fire insurance back, you can get a driver's license today. Go down and buy a 50-foot, 30-foot, 20-foot trailer, whatever it is, and there is no video, there is no sticker that says how to tow safely, there's no pamphlet giving out by the CHP when he pulls trailers over, none of it. So what I'd like to do is allow you guys to look at this letter of the board and have you sign it. Not this time, but I'm going to present it in public comment, and when the board will have a chance to look, and hopefully I can get it on the agenda for your next meeting.
Is that available online by any chance?
It will be.
Okay.
I'm gonna have Mary Beth put it up, and I'll have it send it directly to you guys, so you can all look.
That sounds like a good idea for McGuire.
It's going to McGuire, that's the twos.
Yeah.
I'd like it to come from, it's already coming from the Redwood Valley MAC. I already have the Redwood Valley Fire Department on board. I'm getting the Redwood Valley Fire District to come on board. I'm gonna get Lake County to come on board. If I can get a bunch of different agencies to sign on to this letter, and it starts coming from all these different places, they're gonna be like, we have to implement more trailer chain safety because it was less than a mile away from the CAL FIRE headquarters, less than a year ago. And, this is becoming ludicrous. This is easily preventable. This is an easily preventable and will save lots of money.
Okay.
Are you aware that he's doing a town hall?
Say again.
McGuire's doing a town hall?
No, we're gonna have our Redwood Valley Municipal Advisory meeting Wednesday night, the 8th, I believe, and you can come via Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh, the town
But
hall?
that
She's saying
same
McGuire's holding
time,
the town hall.
Oh, he is?
At 6:30 on the 8th,
Okay,
on video, on Zoom.
okay, cool.
So, and you can, even if you can't make it, you can register and send in comments ahead of time.
And I
And
want
then the topic is fire resilience.
Okay, cool. I just want to warn everybody, I don't own a computer and I never have owned a computer. I keep my computer above my shoulders in between my ears. And that doesn't mean I hold it like this. That means I use this. So most of the time, if you call me, 707-621-0500, I will answer the phone and I will talk to you. And we will get this job done. And we will be the best county in California. And, you know, if
Okay.
you don't believe one person can change the world, you're probably not that person. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
If there's anything
Yeah, so I think the, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
About insurance that Scott gave you?
Yes, Scott Cratty on his
We're
website.
not on, we're like you, we don't have, we can't, believe it or not, where we live, I was just talking to
I
the
believe
fire
you.
chief. We are in a little gray zone up there at the bottom of Goose and Primrose, and across the street they can get it, but we cannot get internet, nothing like that. And I was wondering if maybe if I give you my address, you could send me a.
Of course, as a plumber, as someone who works around this county, which is basically the size of the state of Maine, I talk to folks like you a lot. I get a lot of feedback from around the county. So I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that you know what the deal is,
Yes.
where to go, and how to get there.
Yeah, because I called immediately State Farm, because we're with State Farm, and they were coming and saying they would be leaving us and stuff. And they said in Mendocino County, there was only one person that was being affected by it. It was all down in Santa Rosa and stuff, and I thought that sounded kind of odd myself. And I was really shocked, you know, when my agent said that to me. I said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Because I've been with you since I was 15 years old
Yeah.
with my car insurance." And
Right.
stuff.
No, I feel you.
I stayed with them forever. You know, I'm way up in age now, you know. And anyways, they assured us that it was only one person in Mendocino County that was being affected by it.
That day. The next day, however, was a different story.
Yeah, probably. So, but if I give you my address, could you send?
Of course.
a copy of that?
In fact, why don't you take this?
Are you sure?
Yes, I can have it reprinted or get in touch with
Is
Scott.
it under Mendocino County Fire Safety?
If you're talking about insurance standards, I mean,
When you brought the meeting last year, that's where I got that paper.
things have changed a lot since last
Okay.
year. Things are changing very fast.
That has
Yeah,
the
'cause
5
this was
foot.
recent, you know, the new recent one that they just
The
did.
code, yeah, that
That I
doesn't,
called them.
has a little bit to do with insurance. There are two competing standards at the moment for what's going to shake out in insurance. And there's wildfireprepared.org, which is the insurance company's compendium of standards for what they want you to do to get an insurance discount and or keep your insurance. And there's two different levels of preparedness, and they have, you know, pretty spelled out what the requirements are there. And then the state of California's got its own version of it called Safer from Wildfire. And they're similar but a little different. One of them requires enclosed eaves, the other one doesn't. You know, so there's some differences between the two. Both of the standards say you're going to have some level of community coordination as well to get your insurance carrot, but neither of them has really defined exactly what the community component is yet. But the big answer is that we're at the beginning of this process. I was on a conference call about this like last week, and I asked the question, so they went through all this. They said, here's the standards and blah, blah, blah. And when you ask the question, so if somebody does all that, what exactly can we tell them they're going to get? What exact discount is there? The answer is, we don't know yet. You know, so there's a lot of pressure for the insurance industry to actually step forward and give people clear guidelines about what they can do and what they're going to get for it. But there's a year or two of dancing around before that's actually going to solidify to something that's going to be concrete that you can. The one thing that is concrete, for what it's worth, is that if you, I'm blanking on the name, you lose your insurance and you have to go to the fair plan. So it's going to cost you a fortune, but the fair plan will give you a discount if you do these things. So the fair plan is the one plan that's defined. If you do your home hardening, and pass the inspection, and you do your defensible space and pass your inspection, you get a combined 14.9% off. You get 10% off for doing your home hardening, another 5% for your defensible space. You put those together because it's a discount on a discount, and it doesn't quite get to 15%. But, you know, that's the one concrete thing out there at the moment. But there's, again, you know, it's in the early stages of the insurance industry getting like strong-armed enough to get more specific. And
The commissioner's website has a list of, and it's been up there for a year and a half, or maybe 2 years now, of insurance companies and what the requirement is and what the discount is. Do you know if that's accurate, up to date?
I don't think it's very up to date. I mean, it's really rudimentary. It's you know, they have, the state mandated the insurance companies to come tell them specifically what they would give people if people comply with that safer from wildfire standard that the state has, and they've gotten almost nothing back yet, actually. There are some places that will give you some discount. There's a simple table on there of places that will give you a discount if you're Firewise, so there are some insurance companies that will give you a bit of a discount for Firewise if they'll insure you. You know, but yeah, there's a lot of pressure on them to try to like define what the standard is that you have to do to be able to get insurance. That's like step one. And the other thing about it is if you go and look at the wildfire prepared standards, there's, you know, 2% of homes in Mendocino County that are going to pass an inspection. So there's a lot of retrofitting and assistance that we're going to need to bring to people to help people begin to get there. But, you know, that's part of it, is that part of it is like, we just haven't been building in a Firewise way ever. So we can start doing that. And secondly, you know, so there's a bunch of retrofitting. And what was the other piece of that? Oh, the other piece of that is the standards are really crude at the moment still.
Yeah.
Most of the, sorry, stump speech here, but, you know, most of the, all the assessment that's going on, you know, they've got these giant warehouses, and they've got scientists, and they build a house, and one half of it's got wood shingles, and the other half has concrete, and they throw a bunch of embers at it, and look, the side that had wood shingles caught fire, or, you know, the side that had a bush in front of it caught fire.
Yeah.
So they created a regulation that said all vegetation within 5 feet of the house has to go. You know, but, you know, you built your house next to a mature redwood tree because, you know, is the mature redwood tree a threat? Actually, probably not. But if it's in 5 feet of your house, you're going to have to take it out. Is that going to do more harm than good because it's going to remove the shade from your house and make it hotter? Probably it's going to do more harm than good. So, you know, there's just a lot of nuance that's missing that we're going to have to work out as time goes by.
We had to take our redwood trees out because it was lifting our house up.
Well, there's that, yeah.
Okay.
I had
So
to
it'll
get
be,
permission to do it.
Nature will get you one way or another.
Yeah.
so it'll be a couple years before we have that answer.
So Scott, when you say there's pressure on, as fire safe councils, I mean, that's what we're sort of trying to think of, our county plan. How can we take that up to the state level? We're doing our needs assessment as Firewise groups. We're saying one of the things we need is insurance. And then the county says, yeah, all of us need, and then the state says, yeah, all of us. Is there the California Fire Safe Council? Are they doing anything? I mean, who's the lobbying group at the state level that might be able to put community fire councils pressure on insurance companies?
The main pressure on insurance companies is coming from United policyholders.
Yeah. So supporting them is one thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Which we've been doing that.
Contacting the insurance commissioner directly. He's been very open.
Good idea. Excellent.
Trying to make sure that Rogers inherits the list of priorities from Wood that includes fire insurance, because Wood has been working on that. So, you know, one of our champions in that area is going to be leaving soon, so we need to make sure that his backfill steps in strongly in that.
Yeah. And also our ideas. I think a lot of us who live here on the ground, who have for a long time dealt with fire, have some of the better ideas than the people sitting up there in Sacramento behind their computer. And it's just my opinion, but I think the insurance companies need to start taking into account that we are the boots on the ground. We're the people who have to gather. We're the people who are keeping us safe. And once we can prove that we're doing it better than them, we won't need to hire outside consultants and waste a bunch of money learning something we already know. And I'll be quiet about that. Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Should
I really do have to get going.
Is this something I should keep to read then?
I have to take a look at it and see.
It definitely has the 5-foot clearance one, which I think seems to
The
be.
5-foot clearance is going to state law that's rolling out.
It's
in the
pretty set.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, that's the basic. I mean, the basic, what we know is that most homes burn down from embers. 70 to 90% of homes burn down from embers. And so the thing that matters most is not what's happening out in the forest, but whether you defended your home from embers. And the most important thing to defend your home from embers is the roof in those first 5 feet.
Yep.
Because the embers are gonna, whatever way the wind's blowing, it's gonna be like it's raining matches from that side, and they're gonna hit and they're gonna swirl around in that first 5 feet of your house. And so if you've done a really good job of not having anything flammable in that zone 0, the first 5 feet, the odds of your home surviving are gonna go up considerably.
I suggest rooftop sprinklers for anyone who has that ability, and also talk to the water agency here, because if we all leave with our rooftop sprinklers on, there's probably not gonna be enough pressure to run rooftop sprinklers.
And there's not gonna be enough pressure to run the fire department.
Yeah, that's what happened to the evacuation, and they spent a lot of time going around turning off.
Okay, so that's not.
If you talk to anybody in the field, like Yana Valikovic at the UC, she will say fire sprinklers are a 5th or 6th level thing. They're not a priority. Depends on so many things can go wrong with them. The way the wind blows can make them ineffective. They're
Right.
not a first line of defense. It's not, start there.
But I think they're, like for Brooktrails is a good example. One of the things we've been talking about is Brooktrails finally allows people now to have up to 2,500 gallons of storage.
Nice.
Since they're a water district, they were really concerned about people even saving rainwater, right? It's like, that's our water, it goes into the lake, it's not your water, whatever. Well, now they're allowing that. And we've been playing around with things like a little DC powered pump that can be on a timer, and you could just turn the thing on when you left, and it's not a perfect thing, but if it's just moist, well, it was just the Fry Vineyards the other day, and they have an anecdotal story where they saved some of their stuff.
Yes.
And one of the reasons they saved some of the stuff was they had a little rainbird sprinkler around the day before, and it had moistened this big area. And it was just moist, it wasn't soaking wet, but that kept those embers from frying. And so all this stuff burned down, but there's this big green patch that's just sitting there because it had been lightly watered, wasn't even heavily watered.
And
So I think there is something to that of having, and firefighters like that too. When I was on the department here, even having a 5-gallon bucket sitting around, I mean, things like that are important because sometimes it's that simple. You can just throw a bucket of water on something, it's on your deck, your chair's on fire, boom, it's out, and
just the moistness, like you mentioned, I think is a big deal. For me, I've learned and noticed that my star jasmine, no matter how late in the summer it is, I can literally take my plumber's torch and stick it to my star jasmine and it won't catch on fire. It's the lattice work behind it
right.
that catches on fire. But redwood tends to soak up water. So before I leave my house, I have these star jasmine that are hanging from my eaves.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally take my torch up to them and they won't catch on fire. So it's that 20 minutes I know that if I have that portable place to move a 7-gallon bucket of lattice work of green star jasmine against the fire, against my that space where the fire's gonna come, I'm pretty assured that that jasmine is gonna catch those sparks and those embers, and the wettened redwood lattice is not gonna allow that to start on fire, and that fire is gonna sweep through. Now, if you tell an insurance company, hey, jasmine is a great, they're gonna be like, what's that? So this is the creativity, the cheap, on the cheap, practical way that we can bring solutions to the table so that people are looking and going, yeah, you know what, jasmine doesn't catch on fire. I'm sitting here with a propane torch for 15 minutes and it's got stored so much water from the winter that it won't catch on fire. So if I hang it underneath my eaves, that's a really good way to do some preventative stuff without having to change all the screens underneath my house, right? So these are things that we can learn and bring to the table so that the insurance companies are like, boom, when the light goes on in their office, then that's gonna create that space, that niche for us to continue for the light to go on.
Wouldn't you have a real problem with the first 5 feet? I mean, if you've got all this stuff hanging around your house, that totally goes against what Scott was referencing about the first 5 feet.
Yeah, but that's what Gibbs was saying, is that that's just with an awareness of,
Right.
the easy button is just make concrete 5 feet out all the way around your house, and you're good. And most people are like, well, wait a minute, I mean.
It's
I don't
gonna,
like
it's
that,
gonna heat up
The
during.
problem is, how do you write a law that takes into account every
All
single
of that.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
then people
It's just
enforce
not
it
gonna
right
happen.
away. I mean, it's a big problem. But I did hear you said something about community engagement or involvement or something was part of that as well. I'm thinking about like Santa Rosa, right? It wasn't so much, it's like one house caught on fire and then the whole neighborhood went down because that house got the next house, it got the next house, and all the wooden fences and.
The fencing to be.
all that
Your
stuff.
neighbors are a much bigger risk
And
than
that wasn't
forest
the
fires,
forest.
so.
That's just a neighborhood in the middle of nowhere, the whole shopping center burned down, an asphalt parking lot. So these ideas that because you have a tree somewhere close to your house, that you're more exposed in a neighborhood in Santa Rosa, it's like, I don't, that's that thinking again, where it's easy to just say, gee, lots of trees, lots of fires, oh my God, whereas, hey, look how clean it is in Santa Rosa streets, no problem. You go, yeah, look how many houses burned down there. So, how do we, part of this is you got good ideas, but they're not, the innovation isn't what we're after. We need really base level lobbying pressure, like you're saying, insurance commissioners, assembly people, legislation, taxes to pay for things, I mean, that kind of stuff. Because that's where, then you get into the nitty gritty of what are you gonna implement,
So
Yeah.
Keith,
What are the
Keith, you want to
rules and
circle us
regulations?
back around to what you wanted to focus on for the roundtable?
Yeah, here's my thinking about it,
So
is that
just so we're all on the same
the
page.
county needs the wildfire protection plan, right? So that needs to be updated, and that's got a whole lot of stuff in it. So what's our role in providing things in there? And so the fire chiefs get together and they talk about what they need, and then there's community meetings. I've been doing this for a while, and I haven't had a whole lot of involvement in that, but the main thing is it's a chance for us to put in ideas about what we need to do as far as that wildfire protection plan. So like insurance, for example, is one of those things to make our, community safer. How do we do improvements fire safe wise that will maintain our insurance? And do it as a group, not just one group and whatever, and not even just Mendocino County. The whole state needs to be involved in something like that. So, because I think we need to give our agencies feedback of what we as community members need, and have a clear path of how to regularly provide that input into that process. Because it seems to me to be more of a little tighter-knit group where they want to talk to themselves about stuff and they know better than the community does. And maybe a few people show up at a meeting, but it's usually more of a pain in the butt to them than something productive because they already know a lot of the stuff we talk about. So how do we, that's what we've been working on here with Brooktrails, how do we become a valuable member of the community that adds value to what they're already doing and doesn't cause problems, it creates solutions. And I think, insurance is one of those, but we've also got this community engagement thing like you're talking about. I'm not sure what that means. So like Firewise Communities, that was the other piece I would think that we're working on is how do we as fire safe councils and Firewise Communities show the insurance companies, show the fire agencies that we as community members can, on a voluntary basis and with our own funding and our non-governmental organizations, maintain safety in our own communities that doesn't really rely on them to do that. We're helping them do that, and then they can then help us to do those things. So that's part of that plan of what we need to do is, and so it starts at the Firewise USA, and that's what you guys are sort of working on groups. Needs assessment, you just mentioned needs assessment was a big one, and also an action plan. What are we going to do? And so I would say let's try to coordinate all the fire safe councils in Mendocino County to come up with a list of things we share in common like that, so that we can have a unified voice, so that each of our groups includes that in our plans and our needs assessment and our action plans for Firewise USA, and then roll that up into the county stuff that like Emily was the countywide coordinator, maybe could take that into the state level. And if we could do that with all the various counties, we all have very similar needs and ideas that we need to coalesce at. And I don't know, the California Fire Safe Council, is that an effective entity that represents local fire safe councils, or are they just another government agency that is outside of the personal
My
stuff?
job is
Yes.
done here. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry.
Thank
you.
My job is done here. I realize that you understand what I'm trying to do with all the fire safe councils. Thank you for everyone allowing me to safely pitch my ideas, wrong or right. Whatever works out, I'll be around.
Okay,
My phone number is 707-621-0500.
thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
I think that we have to look at, step back a little bit here, act locally
Thanks, Bob.
and
Think global.
think globally. Yes, that was the other part. Couldn't think of it. So we need to be more fire safe. We need to be more fire wise. And we need to be able to get funding until there's, property tax assessments and tools like that to maintain it. We need to get funding to get some of these big catch-ups done. Scott, you were talking about the map on the website, which I use all the time. I find that really helpful, where you're showing where projects are going on. The grant money is much easier to get if our projects and the things we want to be projects are on that map. Because if you don't have a community wildfire protection plan, you can't get any CAL FIRE stuff. You can't get any, most of the big grants done that are to create and maintain fuel breaks and clearing and that sort of thing. So that is one part of it, and we haven't talked about that. You mentioned it today, but didn't get a lot of attention, is looking at the 15-year-old plan. There was a very active group in Westport that put in 3 projects, and they got a little bit of attention at that time. All the other things we've come up with since then, cultural burns and special kinds of fuel reduction and home hardening and all that sort of thing wasn't really terms 15 years ago. So it's not on the list, and you have to make your own community wildfire plan in order to get on the list, and that takes time. So then you write a grant to get major community wildfire. Well, this saves us all having to write our own plans and maintain them so that we can get the funding. That should be on your list along with the others.
Well, then you heard I think it was Jeff Adair that said last year the county put out an RFP to hire a consultant to update the plan. And I didn't see that they let a contract, but he said today that they have
Yeah,
hired.
that's a new development.
Right. And what that means though is that's our avenue now.
Yes.
I've been asking a lot about this, like, what's going on? Well, I don't know, what's going on? And all of a sudden, oh, we hired somebody, we're doing this, like, okay, that's what I'm talking about.
And-
When are we gonna get our part to say, come on? and
It sounds like that's coming, and I think
I know,
that's,
but I'm just saying, we need to organize, because otherwise we go in there saying,
Well-
we need more, and that's not good enough.
and that's what I was gonna say, is I think the issue, and unfortunately there's nobody from those agencies here, is we need to have a discussion with them at a high level about roles and responsibilities. So what is it that they feel like is their area,
Right.
and they want our input in, but this is what they manage. What is it they would like the fire safe councils to work on? And I think we're probably, at least I know Lauren, Keith and I are and Scott are on the same page as far as what it's basically education of your folks, managing projects in your area, and then doing planning and preparedness, like evacuation planning for your area. That's the localized stuff that these larger organizations need.
Well, vegetation
local-
management is another.
Yeah, the types of local projects that need to be managed.
Right.
So if we're looking to give them that input, I think we need to talk to those agencies and say, are we on the same page? Is this really what you see the role of the fire safe and firewise organizations? And if not, work with that a little bit. But then part of the discussion is also what's our path to get feedback in? And I don't know that, we've never had any of those discussions with CAL FIRE. I don't know if you have had those.
With CAL FIRE a lot.
I know you guys do.
Well, you mentioned there are gonna be community meetings as part of, or maybe Jeff did or whatever, but again, that's sort of like, you advertise it and just like this, 10 people show up and, somebody says, hey, we need more safety, thank you. But like you said, I want something more meaningful where we can, I think we need to identify projects. I mean, to me, that's what your
That's
comment
what
is
I'm
exactly, yeah, me too.
Yeah, we need shopping lists.
Yeah,
Right,
and
and
at the
that's-
end of that, big CPP, there's a list of, here's all the projects everybody
That's
identified. We need to
basically
start.
all it is a shopping list.
Yeah, and we need to hold the consultants accountable this time around. The last CWPP, for what it's worth, is not worth much.
No.
Because, for one reason, is that none of the projects are defined well enough for us to be able to tell whether they happened or not.
Yeah.
No one can look at the CWPP and know whether any of this stuff was done or not done.
Right.
So we need to be very demanding that projects be well-defined, that they have a person that's responsible for providing a status on them. There's got to be kind of a monitoring annually that's built into it. So we will do our best to make sure that you all are aware of those meetings. We're going to ask everybody to be as picky as possible and demanding as possible, because somebody's going to get paid $100,000 to do a plan for us, so we want to make it something that pays. And we want to make sure, the other thing about it, for what it's worth, is that this is going to be the gateway for funding in the future, because we all know the state economy is about to tank. There's not going to be a lot of state project money coming for things, and the two giant pots of federal money both require something to be in your CWPP before they will fund them. So we need to sort of do the best job of putting everything in the kitchen sink in there, so that we have something to point to.
I guess the question is, what is the process to do this? Because I think a bunch of people going to these meetings and individually listing out things isn't going to be as effective as maybe the County Fire Safe Council working with us and gathering and saying, what is it, and let's prioritize. We've had 15 councils say that getting local water tanks and hydrants in is their top priority. So let's put that one on the list. And just working to kind of gather that information in from the locals and represent that to the agencies on our
Would
behalf.
it be possible to have a special meeting of the fire safe councils and the fire chiefs, instead of just quote unquote community meeting where everybody shows up? Can't do that? Agencies and fire safe councils
The
can't?
fire chiefs are not the ones that are gonna help us with this.
Well, whoever the powers that are meeting that I try to get into to get some input to, that they go a consultant, but then there's some other body that actually is taking all this information in, and you have a community meeting that somebody takes a few notes, but it's not what I'm talking about. Like, I was hoping some of these guys would stay today with the agency so we could have that kind of back and forth about what can we do to have the official agency people communicate with the non-governmental organizations doing this, not the general public, homeowners and whatever else, is because we've got different interests than the general public does. And we can also help a lot more as nonprofit organizations, as people that get grants and do work and whatever. We need to coordinate, and right now we're also doing as much as we can ourselves, but I'm not feeling like I'm coordinating enough with the fire agencies as an organization.
Can I say that one of the things about having 65 fire safe councils is that you have so many different ideas about what to do. And the ideas are not based on, I do not agree at all that the people on the ground should be telling the Institute of Business and Home Safety what to do. Their recommendations are not vague. They've been doing this research for 45, 50 years about home hardening, defensible space. They've started to do research on shaded fuel breaks because those are very ill-defined. And from our Pine Mountain Fire Safe Council, we focus on the basic stuff. It's not that complicated to me. Forget the forest. We're not going to, I think Eric and I talked about that a couple of years ago. Forget water tanks. The fire department may or may not even use those water tanks. They bring in their own water trucks. To me, that's not a high priority. Sprinklers, that's kind of a sore spot for me, because if you talk to the fire departments, they will tell you, you're gonna shoot your eye out, kid, if you put up sprinklers. It's just not true. They're not helping us solve these problems. So the research needs to be the basis of all of it. And I think the wildfire protection plan and having specific projects is a good idea, and that's why.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. I'm not telling them what to do.
I know, but what
they
the
need
projects
project
are based
ideas.
on. What-
Have you looked at that CPP?
Well, I think what she's saying is you can't have 65 people
I know,
going.
that's what I'm saying.
I know, but you can't have 65 people going to CAL FIRE and saying, this is, because they're not gonna hear anything, or they're gonna hear a couple of little projects that are like, oh, that's an easy one, we'll put that one in there. I think it's more effective to have all of the fire safe councils speak as one voice
Yeah.
through
But
the
you're
county
not
fire
gonna-
safe
How
council.
about if we have the Firewise communities that are established? There's 4, right, in our county right now? Let's go with the Firewise communities, and let's get the 4 of us together and talk about the things we've been doing. Getting all the one of the reasons I don't attend the Fire Safe Council meetings anymore is because I just can't stand all of these different ideas that people have about what to do. It's not based on research, it's not based on science. Home hardening, defensible space, vents, the zone 0 is not vague. They're not telling you to cut down a redwood tree next to your house, they're telling you to limit up. There's evidence of having trees next to your house actually break up ember storms. Do not put plants next to your house. That is just flat out wrong. Everything's going to burn if you get stuff close enough to the house. So home hardening, defensible space, and then these other things, defensible roads, defensible driveways. Those are the things we're trying to concentrate on.
Yeah, and so
And
here's a
that's
great
the
example.
basis.
We have funding for roadside fuel reduction, defensible space, getting ready to get a $50 million FEMA grant, and we can't get
Fantastic.
access to vacant lots. Okay, I can't get
So
access to.
skip them. You skip them. We'll drive ourselves
There's
crazy.
4,500 vacant lots amongst
There's nothing you can
1,500
do
homes.
about that. You're spinning your wheels, but I mean, I'd like to hear.
I'm sorry, I respectfully
Well,
disagree.
no, you're a bigger,
Maybe-
Every area is
May
different.
I speak about that?
hold on a second.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is that what we do needs to be based on the science.
Yeah, defensible space. But science
But then
doesn't
you
tell you
could-
how to get an owner that's not going to respond to you, give you permission, and they're causing a fire danger.
So that's
not
a
science.
important point of
It's legal.
discussion. But with 65 fire safe councils, I don't want to sit and listen to everybody's
You don't
ideas.
have to.
And I don't.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, I do want to hear, you guys are doing a lot of great stuff, you're doing a lot of great stuff, you're doing a lot of great stuff in Ridgeway. I want to hear the people that are really active. That's a small group.
Okay.
I don't want to hear about all these other weird ideas that people have. It needs to be based on the science and what works. And you mentioned Jana Velikovic. They did a big study up there, her and Steve Quarles in Paradise. And the first thing they said is any structures that are within 18 meters of one another will catch each other on fire.
Exactly.
So that to me is basic science. It's just, so when I go out and talk to people in our fire safe council, of course, get wood away from the house, you know, think about the 5 feet. I was just talking to a neighbor about this yesterday. Think about my own sister, who lives in Santa Rosa, right where the fire came down 2 feet from her house, has a redwood shed over right next to her house, attached to her house. She won't listen to me. So that, but I would love to sit down with the bigger fire safe councils, the active people that are doing things, not all 65, because you're just going to get what we have today, which is people throwing out crazy ideas.
Well, they probably wouldn't show up, just like today. I mean, you're going to get the people that are most involved.
Well, but you want
the
to know
point of
about
it
fire
is
rescue.
coordinated.
You guys are not doing crazy things. You're very organized. We're not doing crazy things.
There's meetings when nobody shows.
There's a huge variety
Yeah.
of, like, I mean, we're fairly similar size as far as the overall size of our area, but your lots, probably majority of them under 20 acres and some of them down to 1 or less.
10th of an acre, 6,000.
So you have the whole issue that you have with abandoned lots right next to, that doesn't happen in my area.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that it's not a valid concern, and I think a lot of the smaller
Yes.
councils might have, like Westport has issues, because I've been out there.
I was gonna say, our problems are nothing like any.
I know, and that's exactly
But
it.
water tanks do make a difference, because it's
No,
all.
but your problems are the same. Home hardening, defensible space,
I
how
would
do you
like
keep
to
the house
stop
from
being
burning
talked
down?
over for a moment, please.
Somebody mentioned the fire in Santa Rosa. That's a topographical area that sweeps down off of Mount St. Helena. It burns every 40 years. 40 years ago, there were no houses there. That fire skips across the environment, and like Scott said, this time it hit houses, burned the house, burned the next house, burned the next.
I'm
I
very
worked on
aware of
that fire.
that. My public storage unit was right next to the Kmart that melted in the parking lot for the public storage building. But, so, I don't want to go there right now. I wanted to point out that what works in one community doesn't work in another, because they're very different. That's what you're saying, Eric.
Yeah,
The purpose of the CWPP is a shopping list that's very community specific. But there are certain things we do all share in common. And those we could put together as a voice for a number of venues, not just CWPP, but other things. And through our Fire Safe Council of the county is a really good starting place to do that, as well as, activists in the county in each of the fire safe councils that are productive join together to go to certain meetings. I think there's different pathways, different purposes, different reasons, they're all good. And coordinating amongst each other how we do that is excellent. And I am a scientist, and I do believe in what you're saying, but there's other things that are very community specific that still have a voice.
and Scott can kick me if I'm speaking for him in a way that I shouldn't. Yeah, you're ready. I trust Scott and the Mendocino County Fire Safe Council to take all of our ideas from the little ones, from all the different ones, and look at them and go, what's reasonable and what maybe is a little out there, because there are some really out there ideas that aren't science-based, they're not fact-based, but what if we're gonna have one plan for the county, because this isn't our local Fire Safe Council plan, this is the county plan. So what is it out of all those ideas that apply to the most people? And you want that list as they go down that shopping list. You don't want something that's gonna hit 5, 10, 30 people at the top of that list. You're looking for stuff. Now, all the ideas need to get filtered in there, and I trust them to do a reasonable and fair job across the county to do that. But I would not want to be, and I don't expect CAL FIRE to sit and listen to 60 different people, give them their idea that works in their neck of the woods with the 10 people that they have. It's a waste of their time, and it's disrespectful to their time and our money, because we're the ones that are paying them. I think we all have great ideas. Every one of these fire safe councils, I've heard great stuff, and I do disagree with you, because I still go to those fire safe council calls, and I hear some great ideas coming in from these smaller councils. Not all of them are, but there are really good ideas out there, and I think we just need to get a way of gathering them and funneling them in a logical format that CAL FIRE can take or the people, the consultants, can take and actually make use of. If we give him, 150 ideas from 65 different people he's got to weed through, it's just not going to happen.
That's kind of what the existing plan is, actually.
Which is why it doesn't work.
It's gonna, I mean, for better or worse, the federal funding for this requires
Yes.
broad community outreach. That's one of the things that the feds demand that you do as part of putting together your plan. And, that's good and bad. Do I agree that every random idea from the public should be prioritized equally? No. There's got to be some vetting at the back end of that. But putting it out there in the general public is what begins to activate the general public, because we're also not going to solve this problem unless there's pretty broad community engagement. So all those places that don't have a super strong fire safe council, this is the opportunity to find people that can get engaged in those communities and you don't start by telling them you got to do this. You start engaging with the community by finding what they're ready to do and helping them do it, and building some momentum and community projects. If we come into every community and say, you gotta do these things, or we're walking and you're not a fire safe
Yeah,
council.
but you're not gonna say that. You're basing it on your experience, on what you know, because you're more experienced than a lot of these. You're not gonna go in with a heavy hand like that. We're not going with.
You work with people from where they are, is basically what I'm saying.
Yes, you do, but you also guide them, and that's what I think is we're lacking at a county level.
Well, I mean, we're lacking that at a state and a federal level. The problem at the state level is that the one metric is acres. For all the one thing that the governor tallies is how many acres you've cleared,
Right.
which is a complete recipe for disaster, because A, it means it drives us out to do stuff in the forests instead of starting in our homes and retrofitting. It drives us to go do quick and easy stuff in those areas and not follow up. So half the time we're whacking things down that leave, more dangerous roadside weeds 2 years from now. So, most of the money we're putting out there is creating an equally or more dangerous situation.
So they don't weight acreage near the house higher than they do acreage out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and acreage near the house is more expensive because it's fussier and you spend more time with each homeowner and whatever. So, a big part of it, that's part of the lobbying thing that we're still trying to figure out how to do is, and we're working with, Emily just had a call yesterday with the fire marshal's office that's supposedly, taking on all this on is, collectively we need to be putting out the message that you need to spend more money on people's homes and right around their communities and, let the forest go back to being forests.
Perfect time for me to quickly step in. I got some freebie stuff to give away. If anybody's interested, these are signs if you live at the end of a dirt road, warning people, please don't shoot with explosive targets and stuff like that. So I'm gonna leave them here for Scott. Scott, anything you don't give away, we'll hook up later. If you have a business where there's trailers going in and out, I have these are laminated for the guard shack. Anyone is welcome to take them. I'm going to leave 2 of those right here. And the one last one I have is, I'll leave a bunch of those. And the one last one I have is also if you have a business and you sell any kind of yard equipment, this will go on the aisle of where you sell the weed eaters or the pump sprayers or whatever. So I'll leave some of those. So here's some simple, non-scientific ways that we can work to, educate people. I think education is the biggest deal. And as far as the science goes, a quick thing is all of the science that has been produced that I saw so far has perimeter foundation. And we have about half of our homes have no perimeter foundation. So the science doesn't hold true. If you go and look at the science, it's all perimeter foundations. Everything that they've done work on is perimeter foundation, and we have a lot of our homes do not have perimeter foundations. So the science for Santa Rosa does not, any of the insurance companies, all the warehouse that Scott was talking about, they were all perimeter foundation homes. So a lot of our homes are post and beam. They don't have perimeter foundations, which is a completely different way that you would fight or stop a fire from starting a fire. If you have dried leaves underneath your house because you don't have a perimeter foundation, it's a big difference than if you have a concrete perimeter foundation.
So funding, you mentioned the state, I've seen federal money coming in, and you're saying it's tied to the Wildfire Protection Plan. So that's happening now here in the county. One of the other things, and I'm not sure it's the end of this, but what we're seeing is that vacant lot thing is a big deal. I don't know if that would fall into that wildfire protection, but also workforce development. I mean, that's been one of our barriers right now is we can't find people to go do work, whether it's home fire hardening or vegetation management. There's only a small workforce around here, they're booked. So that's another opportunity. We've met with the West Company, Mendocino College, the Adult Ed, the North Coast Contractors Association. they're all putting together training programs for training young people in trades, carpentry, plumbing, electrical, and we've been talking with them about training them in in home hardening techniques in particular as part of that trade, because we don't have enough workforce to do this. So I don't know where we can get funding for that. I know there's a IRA, that Investment Reinvestment Act or whatever, has a grant through the CAL FIRE, currently is due the end of this month, and one of those grant topics is workforce development for training arborists and whatever else is for going out to identify and, make recommendations on those kinds of things. So that's another thing I think as a group, we all share that we need more people in our community to do this work, especially home fire hardening, because it's a bunch of different skills. And, roofing is probably okay. We got some of those roofers and gutters. But I mean, just siding, just vents, general contractor, there's just not enough workforce around. So we've been building a database. We're adding on to it all the time. But I think that's another thing that we could do as a group is help the other education organizations. I mentioned the CCC facility here as well, to train people to do, not only defensible space, but also home fire hardening, carpentry kind of stuff, or putting in vents and putting up gutters and all that kind of junk. So where do we get funding for that? How do we as a group work on that kind of stuff? Because it's bigger than our fire safety councils.
Have you talked to Mendocino College?
Yeah, I was at a workshop recently that West County held, and it was Mendocino College, the adult school, the North Coast Builders Exchange, and Willits High School is even part of that. And again, they've got an apprenticeship program where the North Coast Builders Exchange set up, and I can't remember the name, it's like North Coast something Academy or whatever, but young people, high school students, college students can go to this, and in a 6-month training program, they can specialize in whatever. They end up giving them tools, a tool belt, and then they try to place them in an intern position with a contractor. So, it's a great start, but they need help as well because they're lightly funded and they're just volunteers. And so we need to be feeding people into that as well.
Well, that model has worked for other positions that are short in the county. It worked for nursing. It worked for teaching, medical assistants, and I think there's a dentistry one. It is to some degree, it costs money to get it set up, but after that, it's self-funding. People, if it's a Mendocino College program, Mendocino College is relatively inexpensive. I mean, it's actually, honestly, extremely inexpensive as far as education goes. And so the classes will pay for themselves. It just takes some funding and a group that's going to kind of take it up to get it organized and start advertising it, and then after it's up and running for a couple of years, it self-perpetuates.
There's a bit of a chicken and egg thing there too. One thing is for the fuel reduction work, and we actually do have a lot of people that do that. We can do a lot better job of training them to do it well. So that's one thing, but like the home hardening piece, we need to raise the level of people who know they need to harden their home, and then there needs to be some financial support for them because a big chunk of them can't afford to do it, so they can't afford to pay those people to do that business. One of the opportunities we have there is to learn from one of the 4 places, and Brooktrails might be soon on this if you get that block grant, but one of the 3 or 4 places in the state that's doing an experiment with large-scale home hardening subsidy is Lake, right next door, and they are just entering the phase where they are trying to roll out enough contractors to do all that. So it will be, I think, incumbent on us to sort of poach from the contractors that they train and hire to do that stuff, that get a taste of what it's like to have a consistent base of business and do it. That'll be a little hungry after that grant funding runs out. I don't know if you guys know about it, but there's an area in Lake County where literally every house has up to $40,000 of grant money to do retrofitting with. So it's that exact thing that we're talking about. The most dangerous thing in a wildfire is your neighbor's home if it's not prepared. So the state actually is fairly smart on that one. They have not started by saying, here's money that anybody here, there, and there can grab. They're saying, you know, if you harden your home, but your neighbors don't, it wasn't really worth that much because your neighbor's home is probably still gonna catch yours on fire, so let's experiment with doing this in an area at a time.
Why do you think the home hardening funding is so far behind the defensible space?
It's what we're used to. I mean, the defensible space is what we're used to, Cal. All of our funding goes through the Department of Forestry, and the Department of Forestry knows is vegetation management.
Okay, that makes sense.
They still are just barely, the state's gonna roll out some new training on how to do home assessments and stuff, and literally they still include almost no home hardening in the brand new training that they're about to put out.
However, that training is going to be through the Fire Safety Council, not through CAL FIRE, so they can't restrict what we talk about.
Actually, we just heard from them last week that they want to roll it out through CAL FIRE instead of.
But it's still going to be through qualified entities though. So you're not going to be a volunteer with CAL FIRE,
Yeah.
even though CAL FIRE will be overseeing it. They can't stop us from talking about other things, because I talked to them last week also. I wanted to say, one of the things I saw on the last Firewise renewal that we did, and you probably saw this too, and I don't recall seeing it before this year, was they had a survey of how many homes in your community have a fire-resistant roof. Did you see that?
Yeah.
10%, 20%, 50%. It's a wonderful survey that would be wonderful to do at the Mendocino County Fire Safe Council level, to do a survey and get some basic data from fire safe councils in neighborhoods about how many in your community have double pane windows, have fire resistant vents. I can't remember what all the things were. There was about 30 or 35 different things that they're asking. And then they ask you to break it down by 10%, 50%, 75%. And I thought, reflective address signs, I think, was another thing. And I thought, what a wonderful, I kind of made it up for our neighborhood just from driving around, not really knowing for sure. But I thought it would be a wonderful database for us to have.
Yes.
Because it's related to home hardening and defensible space. Also, to speak to your question of why defensible space and has home hardening's lag behind, the defensible space concept started about 45 years ago as a concept for firefighters to be able to park in front of someone's house. It was a firefighter concept. It wasn't a way to stop. It was just a place, a safe place. The same way for the shaded fuel breaks right now, as CAL FIRE is implementing them. It's a safe place for them to drop in firefighters. So the defensible space evolved over years, partly because of what Jack Cohen's research and all that, into what we know today. Because 40 years ago, 45 years ago, they didn't even know embers started houses on fire. And when Jack Cohen first put that idea out, he was actually almost fired from the Forest Service putting that concept out because it was so crazy. They thought it was crazy. So this idea, even that fire that we had that you had here up in Brooktrails at Third Gate, if you drive up Highway 101, where the fire came down to 101, on the right-hand side going north, all trees. You go a little bit over it, the embers went over those trees and started another fire. I thought that's a perfect example of how embers move through an environment and start more fires. But when Jack Cohen first came up with this concept, it was because he was on a fire. He noticed that the houses on the outside of the neighborhood didn't burn down, the houses on the inside did. The same that happened on Glass Fire in Santa Rosa, houses in the middle of the neighborhood burned down because of embers. So that's why the defensible space concept has evolved. CAL FIRE are not fire prevention specialists. They're emergency room doctors.
Yeah.
So they're not necessarily that great an ally. I know you're making progress and you're in contact with individual people that are helping a lot. But their fire prevention specialists just moved on to another job and they're not replacing her, as far as I understand.
So with your comment on the database, I think the new system for home assessments kind of does that, doesn't it?
It's part of the current standard for becoming Firewise requires one of those community assessments, so.
Yeah, and just to say for those numbers, we have 4 Firewise communities currently, but right now I'm working with 8 other communities in Mendocino County to become Firewise, hopefully this year, you know, depending on if everyone gets their paperwork in, so that would be doubling our numbers this year, and then hopefully it's one of those things where we get more neighborhood fire safe councils to become Firewise, and so we'll be getting to, like you said, it's required to do that survey, so hopefully we'll be getting a lot more data from all those different communities, not only of the percentages of what homes look like, but then also as a total Mendocino County, we'll have kind of what you were talking about of like, it's better for us all to conglomerate our numbers and work on projects together. One thing that Firewise can do is the more communities that we have, the more numbers we'll be able to say, if we have X amount of volunteer hours that our community, that all of Mendocino County puts in, and it's 10 times the amount that's required, and we're doing X amount of money goes in from each of these communities, and we're gonna have a lot more of those numbers to back up getting larger grants. And it's not necessarily that every Firewise community will have the same project that they're working on, because every community is very unique. But the more that people we get in the Firewise, the kind of bigger numbers that we're gonna have. And it's a national certification program, so I feel like having some of those numbers, you can say, nationally certified, this is a number that's been approved by CAL FIRE, we have, you know, this much money that's going in from our county, and so hopefully that'll be helpful.
Well, I just want to reiterate that I made up those numbers for our Firewise community.
That's
Well,
part
it's
of
very clear on the survey that it says these are generalizations. It's not asking you to say you have to visit every single home. Some of the Firewise communities can be 2,500 homes. It is not a requirement that you have to go and to check every single home. Part of Firewise says, have a fire official, part of your wildfire risk assessment, have community members who deeply know your community so that you can make really good educated guesses. And that's part of why they want some sort of official to be there for your wildfire risk assessment, to make sure that you're not just making up a number from, you know, absolutely nothing.
On what you're talking about, Marin's approach of doing an assessment every year using that program, that application that they feed all the data into, they will know exact numbers in their county of how many buildings have X, Y, and Z. We don't have that kind of resource or funding, at least not right now. But the more of those assessments we get done, the more actual numbers we have rather than our guesses. Because mine, for my area, would be a guess. I could send out a survey to maybe, I've got contact information, emails for maybe 40% of the people in the area, and we'll probably get less than a 50% response rate. That's the most scientific results that I could get for anyone at this point.
Well, you could extrapolate, at least I would feel more comfortable extrapolating from that.
Yeah.
That's pretty good if you've got 40 or 50% response.
Well, I'm saying we've got 40 or 50, we only have contact information for maybe 40% of our 1,000 people in our area. Out of those 40%, we'll probably get 50% response.
The other
So
thing
we're
about
talking,
this survey is it's an educational tool. I looked at it and I thought, well, that's very interesting. How many people in my neighborhood have this, and this? It's an educational tool, so if it goes out to every homeowner or a resident, of course, Brooktrails, you guys have a massive number of people compared to the rest of us, but, and then you're starting to get back actual data.
Right.
It gets people thinking about, well, do I have a fire-resistant roof? What am I going to mark on that?
Right.
Do I have a reflective address sign? What am I going to mark on that?
Yeah, so like we got funding from the Community Foundation to do 100 home hardening inspections. We've got a contractor that specializes in home hardening. And so what we're doing is we're gathering that kind of data. He goes out and spends 2 or 3 hours on the home, and we've got a database form that he fills out so we can tell like over 90% of the homes out of that 100 have double glazed windows, for example. I was totally surprised. I thought all this older housing stock would be lots of single glaze, but there's a lot of double glaze. But roofs and decks are gigantic. Now, Lake County, I'd be real interested in what they're doing as far as their gathering of data. The FEMA grant we're talking about for Brooktrails, Laco Associates, they're talking about doing a LiDAR survey of the entire community so they can identify exactly where all the houses are relative to vegetation, because right now, you've got a Google map that shows streets and houses and they're just whatever, it's not real. And even satellite photographs are hard because so many houses are under trees and things, so this will be a LiDAR survey for the whole community. And we've got when they did that proposal, we gave them the data we had at the time that said it's just a statistical, out of 1,500 homes, we've only done a small number, but relatively speaking, here's relatively how many are on a fixed foundation, or how many have this type of roof or that type of deck or whatever. So we're continuing to do that with the idea in mind that that's the data that's going to be needed for these home fire hardening contracts when the money does come. But it also can tell us how many vents are we going to, I mean, as a community, we could go out and bulk buy a whole bunch of stuff, gutter guards, vents, various sizes, whatever else is, or at least talk to our vendors, Mendo Mills of the world, whatever, and get them to come in and say, hey, if we bring you some business, will you give a discount to a home fire hardening customer if they come in and order these things? And here's the kind of things we need. Can you make sure you inventory that stuff? So that's what we're trying to get ahead of that curve. Because if $50 million hits this community like it did at Lake County, I'd be really interested to see how far behind the curve they are. It's great, we need a whole bunch of work, but then it's like finding the people to do it, RFPs or solicitations, getting the materials together, building permits, I don't know what, all those things that have to happen to make it real.
The biggest thing is like, given that it's federal money, do you have to do a NEPA assessment of every frickin' home?
Yes.
Which turns out to be something you do have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, having specialists that do that kind of stuff and having a pool of those kind of people to do that kind of work, because that's what's the money is coming. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of federal money, states drying up, but there's a wave of federal money coming, and we're going to miss it if we're not, So that's why I'm thinking we need to really, with the CWPP thing, we need to get done as soon as possible to get some new ideas on that list, because I looked at it the other day, I was like, man, this is way out of date, So.
Yep, no, it's at the verge of, most of the federal stuff actually is a CWPP I think it's within 10 years or something, so ours is on the cusp of not even being usable at all.
Right.
But yeah, we wrote that grant for the county like 2 years ago, and they funded it almost 2 years ago. It's taken this long to get them to hire a consultant.
Well, that Wildfire Prepared Home program that you were talking about, they'll come out for a very modest fee and do an assessment of your home.
They'll come out for $150, and you get a revisit if you want. I've seen a couple of them, and homes that were, they literally like just a home with an immaculate fire-safe roof that had 3 leaves on it, and they clicked fail on the roof because there was vegetation on it, and it's a brutal assessment. But
part of the concern why people have not taken advantage of it is they're afraid, okay, you come out, now I'm going to lose my insurance, never mind, instead of getting a discount.
It's a new program, and so I went to one also, and I was surprised. I'm a big fan of the Institute of Business and Home Safety and the research that they've done, and I've read a shitload of what they've done, and over, and the research behind it and all that. And I was a little bit surprised walking around with the 2 guys doing the assessment, including one guy got on the phone back to South Carolina, that's where they're located, and asked his boss some questions. And they dinged this guy for stuff that I think was not it wasn't what I understand their program to be. And he got dinged for having some rosemary plants within 5 feet. Just a tiny, teeny little bit of rosemary within 5 feet of some big sticks that are open and all. It was weird. I lost a little bit of faith in them because of that, and a little bit.
Do you think they have liability, those inspectors? Because I know PG&E, the surveyors, the state put the liability on the surveyors. And so that's why the surveyors just cut everything down.
No, I don't think that they're even completely hooked in.
So they have no liability for what they're saying? When they put in a report and they fail somebody, they're not in the hook for
I don't think
no
so.
responsibility?
But then conversely, I want to know if they don't fail you, what does that say to you?
Sure.
Because there's all these parallel programs going on.
Right.
The Institute of Business and Home Safety, the Wildfire Prepared Home, Firewise, Cooperative Extension, all these parallel programs, CAL FIRE with their wimpy little home assessments that they do. And of course, insurance companies will listen to CAL FIRE. And CAL FIRE just can't do all these assessments. And this program that they're starting with volunteers to go out and do defensible space inspections, I'm going to volunteer for it because it's what we've got.
Yeah.
It's sounding, the poor guy that's in charge of it at the state level is just overwhelmed with a million things that he's doing. And he was a firefighter, so he's trying to come up to speed on all of this. Nice guy, and you've talked to him, I think, also, but
Back when.
I don't know. I mean, it's going to come to all of us to see if anybody wants to volunteer to do this. And then I think it's a 2-day training on defensible space and some home hardening. You know, we'll see what happens.
Is there plans to train more contractors? Like, you had a couple of workshops a year or two ago to train contractors to become inspectors. Is there more plans?
Now to become inspectors. We are gonna hopefully try to do a batch of trainings for the style of inspection that we do, for what that's worth. You know, we tried to do, I mean, there's again, no getting ahead of this without, like, we need every possible ally. So what we attempted to do was do a training class for the Building and Planning Department at the county, from any of the people that do the buying and selling for contractors at the hardware stores, for architects and designers, and for any building contractors that wanted to come. So they would have that kind of knowledge to give to people. And we relied on the NFPA 2-day training, which turned out to be a very bad fit for them. It was just at a level that they really couldn't connect to. So we are gonna circle around to doing it again someday and taking another run at it, but we're gonna probably have to design our own thing or find something different that really, and not, it's gonna have to, we're gonna have to break it down and just do the hardware store people so we can just really talk with them about what their interests are, and then do the builders, you know, and we tried to do too broad an audience with too broad a class. It was one of our fails, I would say, but.
Well, that was a grant from the Allen Heath Memorial Foundation, and it was from many years ago, and before Scott came on board even, and then it just sort of sat there for a while. So it was an honest attempt.
We learned from it. We will do better next time around.
And COVID was going on, so.
It was before COVID.
No, we finally got it out post-COVID.
Yeah, because there were probably several contractors that would have liked to come from our area, but they were scared to death of COVID.
I mean, it did some good, you know, like Mendo Mill sent a bunch of people, and they did, you know, they came out, the next time Yana was here, they actually showed up with a bunch of stuff that they brought from their store to, you know, so it stimulated some thinking, but it wasn't nearly the, like, community impact that we need to have.
Well, this is where the rubber meets the road also. So you're talking to a contractor, and the contractor knows the last 5 feet, or been through the training, is supposed to be metal of the fence. You know, so the last gate or whatever, the last 5 feet of the fence attached to the house should be metal. Okay, I don't think anybody disagrees with that, but I was talking to a contractor friend of mine just the other day. He's doing a house in Willits. She wants privacy. So then what do you do about that? So what materials do you use? They're more expensive. Do you build something? That's where it gets messy, these things.
Isn't that how things are for contractors all the time?
Well, it is, and if they're not really certain about it, and I don't have, you know, like
There would
this.
be room in our community for more training.
Yeah.
Well, and standards too. I mean, that's the other thing, is if we have, you know, the common things that's training them, the common things to look for, the common things to do. Like gutter covers is a pretty good example. I mean, there's a million types of gutters, and so there's a whole bunch of different types of gutters, and they're not good for everybody, but it's a real common thing that a lot of people could benefit from, you know. And so these roofers that do gutters and stuff, and that should just be part of their, are we putting gutter guards on these, you know, and yeah, you got trees everywhere, you're in that place, and you should do this.
Is there, are there any, are we missing any topics? I'm looking at you two especially, you know, you have a countywide voice and, you know, might be wondering about some things to speak to. You are have a very active community. Are there any other folks?
I get to talk to people frequently, so I'd rather hear what y'all have. I mean, there were some good things that came out today, and for what it's worth, sirens have never actually been on our radar at all. So I'm going to sort of step back and think about whether we need to try to worry about how to incorporate that. So I did hear a number of things today that are things we need to make sure get into the mix and get into the CWPP. I mean, the other thing for what it's worth is that we've expanded a fair bit and we are still drowning. Or Eva here, our newest person, had like 2 meetings on Saturday today, not so atypical. But we also are just beginning to start to use the Measure P money, and we're going to leverage that as much as possible and bring as much as possible. So there are new opportunities for things like this. We actually have some wherewithal to bring resources to things that we didn't before. So that's going to be kind of fun.
So I was working in Mendocino when we did a fire prevention weekend. We brought a bunch of stuff in to sell to people, and it was not a very good response. The public did not respond to it.
You think because they weren't educated on what they
weren't
needed?
educated.
Yeah.
We had the products, we had the knowledge, we were imparting it to them. If they wanted to listen, they weren't even interested.
When was that?
It was about 4 years ago.
Again, part of the chicken and egg thing. We need the more workforce development, but we need people to know what work needs to get done and them to have the wherewithal to do it, and those things to kind of come up.
Well, I think that's where this database, like what Lauren was saying, the data is what everybody needs, so if we can say that's what we're after, and I think that Lake County, that's why I'm real interested in how they're doing inventory on what they're doing, because somebody has to come up with estimates for, okay, your $40,000 is going for deck and roof and gutters and this, and your $40,000 is going for this and that. There's somebody's doing a lot of that kind of work, and then there's a giant list of materials that's going to be generated from all that, and a list of the type of contractors that are going to need for all those things, and building permits that are needed for all those various things. So the funding is there, but who's actually doing that, and how are they capturing that data in the database, and are they working with their vendors? So can do that. We did a program in Fort Bragg for a health program. We did a water conservation thing back in the drought days, back when the drought was a big deal. And the harbor companies on the coast did specials. We would give people coupons and say, if you go in with this coupon, they'll give you a discount on your water-saving devices. And we had a whole bunch of things, low flow shower heads and the different types of watering devices, all this kind of stuff. And they said they've got a lot of Mendocino there and Coast Harbor got a lot of business from that, from people coming in, because we did an education program and we did all these, freebies kind of thing, discounts and whatever. Got a lot of people. The thing is it was frustrating because water conservation doesn't go real far when you're already hardly using any water at all. I mean, families were so conservative and they still got a basic fee on their water. When they use no water, they still paid a bunch of money. So we ended up having to work on the fee structure. We can't get a billing structure that actually benefits low income people who don't use our clean water, instead of just making them pay the same thing for somebody that uses the full basic amount, which was a lot of water. So I think we have something like that going on here that people want to know. I mean, it's just we have to make it easy for them. And financing is going to be something that's going to be important. Giveaways, contests, games, fun, making it more interesting that way. Trying to have maybe neighborhood contests. We've been talking about trying to form some neighborhood groups and hand out some prizes for the first group. They can get an address sign on every single house on the block or something like that.
That's a good idea.
Well, yeah, it's fun. When we did, Reddy did the Solar Expo and stuff, it was entertainment, education, and fun. That was the big deal, because we wanted to educate, but if it wasn't entertaining and fun, people don't like sitting in lectures and go to sleep. But if they could see electric cars, ride an electric car, or do those kind of things, they were like all over it, because it was fun. And so we've got to think more about how can we make this fun kind of a thing is along with getting the work done. And
less overwhelming. That's the other thing. This actually came out of the Firewise Community Assessment meeting we had with CompChi. Somebody said, can you just tell me one thing to do? And we thought about that a little bit, and one of the things that's in development is a poster project that just focuses on one thing at a time, like don't have a wooden fence connected to your house. Here's a picture of what the right way, what a good and a bad. Here's don't have plants within 5 feet of your house. Don't have this look, have this look. So we're designing those now, and we're going to, the notion is that we will like try to saturate a community with just one of those at once. So Compton might get the screen posters there for 2 months, while Westport has the Gates posters, and then in a couple months we swap those around so people just get like
So it's
regularly saturated with just a thing. They can just do a thing as opposed to worrying about everything. And an idea like tying that together with maybe a pile of coupons for the hardware store that relates to that thing.
Or a contest of some sort, because then people get excited about your community's gonna win and whatever.
It's a good idea.
I think the NFPA has those posters.
Not the simple, just do this one thing that we're talking about. We've looked at those. Yeah.
We're over our time, you guys. I mean, I really appreciate everybody's participation, and I think the session with the panel was really great, the agency folks. I mean, I got a lot of that, but I think our goal today was to try to make those connections stronger. And, and having OES here with CAL FIRE and the local fire department, I mean, from our community standpoint, like that's the whole line of county-related stuff. We tried to get BLM here as well, because even though we're not in a federal forest, there's still that sort of federal agency down to the state, down to the local, and whatever. So I'm thinking about getting funding. I think that's what we need to focus on, because I think, like I say, the state of California is going to not be doing so good. There is some federal money available, but we got to line up to get it, and I think the CWPP is part of that. But I'm thinking there's like I mentioned, the workforce development. There's another one for community and urban forests, that's for managing community and urban forests, so there's money for that. And so, I think we just need to be creative about pulling in some of those funds, because that money's not going to last very long either.
Thanks. All of those pieces. Another one is state parks. I mean, the state parks guy just came to a Navarro watershed meeting, and the reason much isn't happening here is because our state parks folks are based in Sonoma, and they're doing all their work in Sonoma at the moment. So, just having the opportunity to be in a room with those folks, though, and talk to them about, what about the woods? That's right next to a state park, and they need some help there. Couldn't we reprioritize that? Maybe, Elk apparently is losing their insurance, their fire department, because of the state park mess. It's right there. So, so pulling those pieces together is.
State parks have very little money right now.
Yeah. But the more that we actually engage and talk with them regularly, the bigger the chance that some of our projects will percolate up.
So I didn't hear a timeline on that contract for the CWPP. So is that, you think, within a year? Is that what we're talking about?
It's supposed to, we will know soon if somebody really wants to be. So the county sent out invites for the first stakeholder meeting with the consultants. The county hasn't met with the consultants yet, other than just to say hi. Again, I think Jeff said the deadline for the scheduling thing for the meeting was Monday, and so it's supposed to be within the next few weeks that there's like the initial meeting with stakeholders and the consultants to plot it out.
The stakeholders groups like us are more like people at your level, state park, BLM.
It's mostly, it went to all the fire chiefs, it went to a number of people at CAL FIRE, it did go to us. I do not know, I'm
It's not at the neighborhood level.
I think that when they see us, they see Scott. Scott's the connection to us and the representative at this point. And I expect that they'll either ask him for our input, or they will have community meetings where they want us to show up, but I'm not expecting to get an invitation from them.
And it depends, if somebody really wants to, let me know, and tell Jeff to send out an invitation to you. Yeah, I mean, I think that is the intended conduit, is that it comes through us, and part of what we're gonna do is try to get people to show up at those meetings with input. So, I mean, what we tell the consultants is if you want a gateway to 70-odd neighborhood fire safe councils, the people you're supposed to be reaching, then that has to come through us.
I want to say something. I'm Nancy Simpson. I do the Facebook page for Sherwood Firewise. And my focus has been on general education about fire. And I post information that comes from fire agencies in California and around the country that is very specific to fire. So that as a whole population, we all have a source of information that keeps us on the same page. Today, the fire chief came up to me and said, I know we got off on the wrong foot 6 years ago, but I want you to know that every time you post something about fire on the Firewise page, I forward that to 5,000 people on my list. So it's improving education on a bigger scale than just Brooktrails.
That's the power of social media, and that'd be a good social media
6
page.
years
Yeah.
of hard work.
Yeah, well, there's been a lot of that going on in the county, and for what it's worth, the Fire Chiefs Association is much more attuned to prevention now than they were a few years ago. A lot of them are rolling out prevention programs. Laytonville started, from one of our microgrants, Laytonville started their own abatement program and started going house to house, and has created a wildfire little network of new fire safe councils out of, just being out there in the community. So, just putting those pieces together, and I think our CAL FIRE folks too have come a long way in getting much more on board with prevention. So. Team's getting there, but we still have obviously a huge mess. So,
All right, well, I think we did good, guys.
yeah,